Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Take a moment to get comfortable wherever you are. Let your shoulders relax and let the day gently fall away. You don't need to do anything right now. Just listen and let the story unfold at its own pace. Whenever you're ready, we'll begin.
When the stars began to fade, long before anyone noticed the stars were fading, Eldoria was known as the kingdom where night itself felt alive. By day, the land shimmered with gentle beauty, rolling hills kissed by sunlight, rivers that sang softly against their stone beds, and forests where leaves whispered ancient secrets to the wind. But by night, Eldoria became something else entirely. The sky bloomed into endless constellations, stars so bright and close they felt like companions watching over every sleeping home. People said the stars listened, and for centuries they were right. Every child in Eldoria grew up knowing the old saying, "As long as the stars remember us, Eldoria will endure." Lanterns were lit at dusk not just to guide travelers, but to greet the heavens. Homes were built with wide windows so starlight could rest gently upon pillows and dreams. At the heart of this sacred bond stood the Star Keepers. They were not kings or queens, nor warriors clad in armor. They were quiet watchers, guardians of the sky trained from childhood to read the subtle language of stars. They mapped the heavens, tended the ancient observatories, and performed nightly rituals that kept the balance between the earth below and the cosmos above. And for as long as anyone could remember, there had always been many of them, until there were not. No one could say exactly when the fading began. At first, it was subtle enough to dismiss. A constellation missing a single spark. A star that once glowed warm now flickering faintly, like a candle nearing the end of its wick. The elders blamed cloud cover, tired eyes, or shifting seasons. But the night sky does not lie forever. One autumn evening, as amber leaves drifted through the streets of the capital, an old astronomer named Marrow stood atop the high observatory and felt his breath catch. Above him, the constellation of the Silver Swan, unchanged for 1,000 years, was incomplete. One star was gone, not hidden, gone. Marrow's hands trembled as he traced the familiar pattern in the air, his fingers stopping where the missing star should have been. The silence around him felt heavier than any storm. "The sky is forgetting," he whispered. And with that truth, a slow unease settled over Eldoria like a quiet frost. Far from the capital, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and whispering pines, a child named Elira stood alone beneath the night sky. She was no one important, at least not yet. Elira lived with her grandmother in a modest stone cottage at the edge of the village of Larkspur Vale. By day, she helped gather herbs, fetch water, and mend old cloth. By night, she did something no one else seemed to care about anymore. She watched the stars, not casually, not in passing. She watched them the way one listens to a heartbeat, carefully, patiently, with devotion. Wrapped in a woolen blanket, Elira lay atop the grassy hill behind her home, her breath forming soft clouds in the cool night air. The stars shimmered faintly above, but something felt wrong. "They're quieter tonight," she murmured. Elira had never told anyone this, not even her grandmother, but she could feel the stars. Not with magic spells or ancient tools, just a gentle awareness, like recognizing a familiar voice in a crowded room. Tonight, those voices trembled. One star near the horizon flickered weakly, its glow paling as if struggling to remain. Elira's heart tightened. "Please," she whispered, not knowing who she was speaking to, "don't go." The star pulsed once soft, fragile, then steady. Elira exhaled, tears stinging her eyes. She did not know that far away, in the capital's observatory, bells were beginning to toll. The star keepers gathered that same night beneath the crystal dome of the high observatory. Their robes, once shimmering with celestial embroidery, now seemed duller, as if even the fabric sensed the shift. Of the many who once stood watch, only 3 remained. Master Cauldron, bent with age but sharp-eyed. Lady Vales, whose silver hair mirrored the moon. And young Orion, barely grown, his hands trembling as he clutched his star map. "The patterns are collapsing," Orion said quietly. "Entire star paths are thinning." Vales closed her eyes. "The sky is unraveling." Cauldron's voice was heavy. "Then the truth can no longer be hidden. The star keepers are fading because the bond is breaking." Orion swallowed. "What does that mean for Eldoria?" Cauldron looked upward through the crystal dome. "It means the kingdom is losing its guardian. And if the stars fully fade," he did not finish. They all knew. Without the stars, Eldoria's magic would unravel. Crops would fail. Seasons would falter. Dreams would become restless and dark. The balance that had protected the kingdom for generations would collapse. "There must be a way," Orion said desperately. "An old rite, a forgotten star song, something." Vales turned slowly, her gaze distant. "There is one legend, but it was never meant to be real." Cauldron's breath caught. "The last star keeper." Silence followed. Vales nodded. "A child chosen not by bloodline or training, but by the stars themselves. A soul who hears what others cannot." Orion's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Does such a child exist?" Far away in Larkspur Vale, Elira felt a sudden warmth spread across her chest as a falling star streaked silently across the sky. She sat up sharply, heart pounding. The star did not vanish. It fell slowly, gently toward the hills beyond the village, leaving behind a trail of silver light that shimmered like a promise. Elira stood, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "I have to go," she whispered, though no one had called her name. By morning, Rumors swept through Eldoria like wind through tall grass. Lanterns dimmed earlier than usual. Farmers spoke of restless soil. Children complained of uneasy dreams where the sky cracked open and stars wept light like rain. And in the capital, the Star Keepers made a decision that would change the fate of the kingdom. "We will search," Cauldron declared. "Every valley, every village, until the stars answer." That same morning, Elira packed a small satchel, bread, water, her grandmother's old scarf, and stood at the cottage door. Her grandmother studied her quietly, eyes soft but knowing. "You felt it," she said. Elira nodded. "Something is calling me." Her grandmother stepped forward, placing a gentle hand over Elira's heart. "Then go, little star. Some lights are meant to guide more than one home." Elira embraced her tightly, then turned toward the hills, where faint silver shimmer still lingered in the daylight sky. She did not know what awaited her. She did not know that she was walking toward a destiny written long before her birth. But above her, the stars, though fading, watched closely. Because hope, even dim, is never truly lost. And somewhere between the earth and the heavens, the last star keeper was awakening. The child chosen by the night sky. Morning came to Larkspur Vale gently, as it always had. Soft light slipping over rolling hills. Birds calling to one another in low, familiar tones. Smoke curling lazily from stone chimneys. To most of the village, it was an ordinary dawn. But to Elira, the world felt irrevocably changed. She stood at the edge of the hill overlooking her home, the village still half asleep behind her. The path ahead curved between pine-covered slopes and vanished into a stretch of land few villagers ever crossed. Her satchel rested lightly against her back, but her chest felt heavy, as if she were carrying more than bread and water. The sky above her was pale now, the stars long gone, yet she could still feel them. They lingered like echoes after a song. "You're really leaving," she whispered to herself, fingers tightening around the worn scarf her grandmother had given her. It smelled faintly of dried herbs and hearth smoke, comforting things. Anchors. A breeze stirred, brushing against her cheek. It wasn't strong, but it was deliberate, curling around her like a guiding hand. Elira exhaled. "All right," she said softly. "I'm listening." And with that, she stepped onto the path. The road beyond Larkspur Vale was older than memory. Moss-covered stones marked its edges, and tall grasses bent inward, as if curious about the traveler passing through. Birds followed her for a time, hopping from branch to branch, chirping softly before eventually veering away. As the sun climbed higher, the air grew warmer, but the strange heaviness in Elira's chest did not fade. If anything, it deepened, thrumming gently beneath her ribs. She stopped suddenly. The sensation sharpened not pain but awareness. Elira looked up. High above, barely visible in the daylight sky, a single star shimmered faintly. It should not have been there. Stars never lingered past dawn, her breath caught. "You stayed," she murmured. The star pulsed just once. Warmth flooded her chest, spreading outward like sunlight through cold water. For a fleeting moment, Elira felt something vast brush against her awareness, ancient, patient, and filled with quiet hope. Then it was gone. The sky returned to blue. The world resumed its gentle sounds. But Elira knew, without question, that she had been seen. By midday, she reached the edge of the whispering fields, a wide stretch of open land where the wind carried voices from long ago. Eldorians believed the fields remembered every footstep, every laugh, every sorrow that had ever passed through them. Elira felt that memory hum beneath her feet. She knelt beside a small stream, splashing cool water onto her face. As she did, the surface rippled strangely, not from her touch, but from something beneath. An image flickered. She gasped, pulling her hand back. The water stilled, then shimmered again, reflecting not her face, but the high observatory bathed in moonlight. Elira stared, heart racing. She saw robed figures moving beneath a crystal dome, heard faint echoes of voices she did not recognize. The sky is fading. The bond is breaking. The child must be found. The image dissolved. Elira sank back onto the grass, breath unsteady. "I didn't imagine that," she whispered. The stream flowed on, indifferent, yet something inside her had shifted. The pull in her chest was stronger now, directional, purposeful. "They're looking for me," she said softly, the realization settling like a quiet truth rather than a shock. She didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. That same afternoon, the Star Keeper's search began. From the capital, small groups of watchers departed in every direction. Astronomers, seekers, and lantern guides trained to recognize celestial signs. Their lanterns glowed faintly even in daylight, tuned to respond to star energy. Master Cauldron stood atop the observatory steps, staff in hand, watching them go. "We may not reach the child in time," Orion said beside him, worry threading his voice. Cauldron's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. "If the stars have chosen her, then time will bend in her favor." Vales approached quietly. The skies shifted again last night. One constellation dimmed, but another brightened, briefly. Cauldron turned. "Which one?" Vales's voice was hushed. "The keeper's crown." Silence fell between them. "That constellation hasn't brightened in centuries," Orion breathed. Cauldron closed his eyes. "Then the legend is waking." As dusk fell, Elira found shelter beneath an old oak tree, its roots forming a natural hollow. She ate quietly, listening to the world settle into evening. The sky deepened into indigo. Stars emerged one by one. Elira's breath slowed, her senses sharpening. Each star felt distinct now, some distant and weary, others steady but dim. One near the horizon flickered again. Elira raised her hand instinctively. "I'm here," she whispered. The star brightened, not dramatically, just enough. A gentle warmth spread through her palm, and she gasped as thin threads of light extended from the star, invisible to the world, but clear to her. They brushed her fingers, wrapped around her wrist like strands of silk. She laughed softly, tears welling. "I don't know what you want from me," she said, voice trembling, "but I'll try." The threads tightened affirmation, then something else shifted. The air grew colder. A shadow moved between the trees. Elira's heart raced as she stood, backing toward the oak. The darkness wasn't natural, it swallowed starlight, bending it inward. She remembered her grandmother's words. Some lights are meant to guide more than one home. The warmth in her chest flared. Elira lifted her hand again, not in fear, but in invitation. The star above pulsed. Light surged through the threads, flooding her veins with a soft, radiant glow. It wasn't blinding. It was gentle, protective. The shadow recoiled, hissing like wind through broken stone, then dissolved into the night. Elira sank to her knees, breath shaking. "I did that," she whispered. Above her, the stars shimmered, faint but watching. By the time dawn returned, Elira knew the truth. She wasn't just hearing the stars. She was answering them. As she resumed her journey, the path ahead felt clearer. Not easier, but certain. Somewhere beyond the hills, beyond the fields and forests, the star keepers searched for a child chosen by the night sky. And that child was walking toward them, unaware of how close the darkness truly was, unaware that Eldoria's fate now rested in her quiet, steady steps. But the stars, though fading, had placed their final hope in her. And for the first time in generations, they dared to shine. A kingdom guided by starlight. By the third night of her journey, Elira began to understand something the elders of Larkspur Vale had never spoken aloud. Eldoria did not simply exist beneath the stars. It listened to them. She felt it in the way the roads subtly shifted beneath her feet, guiding her away from crumbling bridges and toward safer crossings. She felt it in the way wild animals paused to watch her pass, never threatening, never afraid, only curious, as though recognizing a familiar rhythm moving through the world again. And above all, she felt it in the light. That evening, the sky unfurled slowly, twilight melting into indigo as stars emerged one by one. They seemed closer now, brighter, not by much, but enough that Elira noticed. Enough that she felt her chest warm in response, like a hearth rekindled after long neglect. She had reached the outskirts of a small town just as night fully settled. Its name, she later learned, was Stelmere, a place once famous for its sky festivals and night markets, now quiet and subdued. Lanterns glowed faintly along the streets, but many windows remained dark, as if the town had learned not to hope too brightly. Elira paused at the edge of the road, taking it in. The buildings were built low and wide. rooftops angled to catch starlight. Old star symbols were carved into door frames and archways, worn smooth by time. Once this town had lived by the night sky. Now it seemed to endure it. As she stepped inside Stelmere, something subtle happened. Lanterns flickered, not all at once, but one by one, like a ripple of recognition. Elira stopped, heart racing. She hadn't touched anything. Around her, people paused mid-step. A shopkeeper glanced up from his stall. A woman holding a child tightened her grip, eyes lifting toward the sky. "Did you feel that?" Someone murmured. The air hummed softly, charged with a warmth that hadn't been there moments before. Elira swallowed, suddenly aware of herself, of the quiet glow beneath her skin, of the invisible thread still connecting her to the stars above. "I'm sorry," she whispered instinctively, though she wasn't sure why. But no one seemed afraid. An elderly man approached slowly, his posture stooped, eyes sharp with something like wonder. "You carry starlight," he said simply. Elira froze. I don't mean to." He smiled gently. "Few who do ever intend to. Come, you should rest." She was given a place to sleep above the town's old observatory, a modest structure now rarely used. As Elira lay on a narrow bed beneath a slanted window, she watched the stars drift slowly overhead. For the first time since leaving home, exhaustion settled fully into her bones. But sleep did not come easily. When it did, it carried her somewhere else. She stood in a vast hall made of crystal and shadow, its ceiling open to a sky swirling with constellations both familiar and strange. Star maps hovered in the air, shifting and rearranging themselves like living things. At the center of the hall stood a figure robed in deep midnight blue. Elira's heart thudded. "Who are you?" The figure turned. Their face was indistinct, as though seen through starlight and mist, but their voice was clear. "You walk the paths we once guarded." Elira felt no fear, only sadness. "Why are the stars fading?" she asked. The figure lifted a hand and the constellations dimmed slightly. "Because the bond weakened, because guardians forgot to listen, because balance was neglected." Elira stepped closer. "Then teach me." The figure's presence softened. "We are teaching you already." The hall dissolved into light. She woke just before dawn, breath unsteady, heart full. Below her window, Stelmere stirred. As Elira descended the observatory stairs, she found the town gathered quietly in the square. Lanterns burned brighter than before. People whispered not in fear, but in cautious hope. The elderly man from the night before approached again. "The sky felt warmer," he said, "like it used to." Elira didn't know what to say. "I'm just passing through," she said finally. He nodded. "So did the stars once." And yet they stayed. He reached into his coat and handed her a small object, a pendant shaped like a simple star, worn smooth. "For the road," he said. Elira accepted it, fingers curling around the cool metal. As she left Stelmere, she felt eyes on her, not watching her go, but watching the sky above her. And the stars shone just a little steadier. High atop the capital's high observatory, Master Cauldron felt the shift. He straightened suddenly, staff striking stone. "The southern paths," he said. She passed through Stelmere. Orion leaned forward, hope flickering across his face. "You're sure?" Cauldron nodded. Lanterns flared, star lines tightened. The kingdom responded. Vales exhaled slowly. Then Eldoria remembers itself. But even as relief spread through the observatory, something darker stirred beyond the far mountains, where light bent strangely and the sky refused to fully darken. Something ancient had noticed the change, and it was not pleased. By the time night fell again, Eldoria had reached the edge of the luminous plains, a wide expanse where pale flowers bloomed only under starlight. She stepped carefully among them, their petals glowing faintly as she passed. The stars above pulsed softly. She paused. "Is this right?" she asked aloud. The wind answered, not with words but with direction, brushing her gently forward. As she walked, memories not her own flickered at the edge of her thoughts. Star ceremonies, ancient vows, nights spent watching the heavens not for answers, but for understanding. Tears welled unexpectedly. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. The stars did not argue. They simply stayed. Ahead in the distance, a faint glow marked the capital, Eldoria's heart, where the last star keepers waited, hoping the sky had not chosen too late. Behind her, the land she passed through rested easier. And above it all, the heavens, fragile, fading, yet stubbornly alive, guided the girl who carried their final promise. The kingdom had always been guided by starlight. It simply needed someone willing to listen again. Lanterns made from fallen constellations. The road toward the capital curved gently eastward, rising into a region Eldorians called the High Lantern Ways. It was said that long ago, when the stars shone brighter and closer, fragments of fallen constellations had been gathered here, not as weapons or relics, but as lights. Eldoria felt the shift as soon as she stepped onto the path. The air grew thinner, clearer, carrying a faint metallic sweetness that reminded her of cold nights and distant storms. Stone pillars lined the road at irregular intervals, each crowned with a lantern unlike any she had seen before. Their glass was not glass at all, but something crystalline, catching and bending light in impossible ways. Even unlit, they shimmered softly. As dusk approached, Eldoria slowed, drawn toward one of the lanterns. Its frame was etched with delicate markings, constellation lines, intersecting and diverging like memories stitched into metal. She raised a hand, hesitating just before touching it. The lantern flickered, not into full light, just a quiet pulse as though recognizing her presence. Eldoria drew back, heart pounding. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she whispered. The lantern responded with a gentle glow. One by one, others along the path awakened, their light spreading like a constellation reborn on the earth. The road before her was suddenly bathed in warm, silvery illumination. Elira stood very still. "They're reacting to me," she said softly. Above her, the stars shimmered faintly as if in agreement. She was not alone for long. A figure emerged from between the pillars, a man wrapped in a travel-worn cloak, a lantern staff resting in his hand. His hair was dark, threaded with gray, and his eyes reflected the lantern light with quiet intensity. He stopped when he saw her, surprise flickering across his face. "Well," he said after a moment, "that doesn't happen every day." Elira swallowed. "I'm sorry if he raised a hand, smiling gently. "No apology needed. You didn't light them. They chose to wake." She frowned slightly. "You know about these lanterns?" "I tend them," he replied. "Or what's left of them. Name's Corin, lantern warden of the high ways." Her breath caught. Lantern wardens were spoken of in stories, keepers of the old star lights, guides for travelers during times when the sky alone was not enough. "I'm Elira," she said. "I didn't know anyone still believed." Corin finished softly. She nodded. Corin looked down the road where lanterns continued glowing steadily. "Most don't, but belief has little to do with truth." He studied her more closely now, not with suspicion but recognition. "You carry starlight," he said, echoing the words spoken in Stelmere. Elira's shoulders tensed. "I don't fully understand it." "Neither did the last one," Corin said quietly. She looked at him sharply. "The last one." He met her gaze. "The last star keeper to walk this road." They walked together as night fully settled, lanterns casting gentle halos along the stone path. The wind whispered softly through the pillars, carrying fragments of old songs. "These lanterns," Corin said, tapping one gently with his staff, "were forged from fallen constellations. Not destroyed stars, but pieces shed willingly when the heavens grew heavy." Elira listened intently. "They were meant to guide those chosen by the sky," he continued, "to remind the world that even fallen light can still show the way." She touched the star-shaped pendant from Stelmere, feeling it warm slightly. "Why do they respond to me?" she asked. Corin's voice was steady, but there was something careful beneath it. "Because you're listening, and because the sky is running out of voices." They reached a resting alcove carved into the hillside. Corin lit a small fire, its glow blending seamlessly with the lantern light. "Rest," he said. "These roads remember much. They'll give you what strength they can." As Elira sat, exhaustion finally settling deep, Corin spoke again, this time more quietly. "There's something you should know," he said. "When the stars began fading, some of their light didn't vanish, it fell." Elira looked up. "And where it falls," he continued, "shadows follow." That night, Elira dreamed again. She stood beneath a sky fractured like broken glass. Stars flickered, dimmed, and vanished, each loss sending ripples through the darkness. Below, lanterns struggled to stay lit, their glow wavering. A shadow stretched upward, reaching. Elira tried to call out, but no sound came. Then, from within her chest, a spark flared. She lifted her hands and light poured outward, not blinding but steady. The lanterns below responded, flaring brighter, pushing the shadow back. A voice echoed, not loud but unyielding. Light does not disappear, it chooses where to rest. She woke with a gasp. The lanterns along the road burned steadily. Corin watched her from across the fire. "You felt it, didn't you?" She nodded slowly. "Something is following me." He sighed. "Then it has noticed what the stars already know." They parted at dawn. "The capital lies beyond the luminous ridge," Corin said, gesturing east. "You'll find others there, those who still remember their purpose." Elira hesitated. "Will you come with me?" Corin smiled sadly. "My duty is here. These lanterns will need tending when the night grows darker." He pressed a small object into her palm, a shard of crystalline light, warm and humming faintly. "A fallen constellation," he said, "for when your path feels uncertain." Elira closed her fingers around it. "Thank you." As she walked away, the lanterns dimmed slightly, not extinguished but resting. Behind her, Corin watched until she vanished over the ridge. Above them both, the stars shimmered faintly. By nightfall, Elira stood atop the luminous ridge. Below her spread Eldoria's heartlands, rivers like silver threads, forests breathing softly, the distant glow of the capital barely visible beneath the darkening sky. She felt it then, a deep, steady pull, stronger than ever. "I'm coming," she whispered to the heavens. A star near the horizon pulsed faintly in response. But beyond the mountains, where light bent strangely, something ancient stirred, aware now not just of fading stars, but of the girl carrying their last echoes. And the lanterns made from fallen constellations burned on, quietly defiant against the dark. The observatory at the edge of time. By the time Elira descended from the luminous ridge, the sky had deepened into a velvet dusk, the kind that felt ancient, older than memory, older than fear. The capital of Eldoria lay ahead, not blazing with light as the stories once promised, but breathing quietly beneath the stars, as though conserving what little radiance remained. Its towers rose gently rather than sharply, shaped to follow the sky instead of defy it. At the city's highest point stood the grand observatory, perched at the edge of a cliff overlooking endless lowlands. From afar, it looked less like a fortress of stone and more like a patient watcher waiting. As Elira entered the city gates, she felt the pull again, stronger now. Not painful but insistent, like a heartbeat aligning with her own. People moved slowly through the streets, their lives softened by long habit. Lanterns glowed dimly. Murmured conversations faded as eyes turned upward, following the same instinct that guided her steps. "She's here," someone whispered. Elira didn't look back. The path to the observatory wound upward through quiet terraces and star gardens long left untended. Pale flowers still bloomed, though their glow was faint, as if unsure whether they were still needed. At the observatory doors, she paused. They were massive, etched with star charts so old their meanings had been forgotten. Symbols overlapped, layered by generations of hands trying to understand the sky. The doors opened before she touched them. Inside, time felt different. Not slower exactly, but thicker, as though moments stacked upon one another instead of passing away. The air hummed faintly, alive with unseen currents. The chamber was circular, its ceiling open to the sky. Instruments of brass and crystal filled the space, orreries frozen mid-motion, telescopes angled toward constellations no longer visible, star maps glowing softly with residual magic. 3 figures waited near the center. Master Cauldron stood tall despite his age, silver hair bound neatly back, eyes sharp as a winter dawn. Beside him stood Vales, wrapped in layered robes, his expression measured, unreadable. And slightly behind them, Orion, younger, restless, his gaze fixed on Elira with something like awe. "You felt the pull," Cauldron said gently. "Good. That means the observatory still recognizes you." Elira swallowed. "I didn't come because of it," she said quietly. "I came because the stars are fading." Vales inclined his head. "Then you already understand more than most." Orion stepped forward. "Do you know what this place is?" "A listening point," Elira replied after a pause. "Not to watch the stars, but to hear them." Silence followed. Then Cauldron smiled. "It has been centuries," he said softly, "since anyone answered that way." They led her to the center of the chamber where a shallow basin of liquid starlight rested, still, reflective, impossibly deep. "This is the chronal lens," Vales explained. "It does not show the future or the past. It shows continuity, how things remain connected across time." Elira stepped closer. The surface rippled. Images formed, not clear scenes, but impressions. She saw hands lighting lanterns along the high waves. Children tracing constellations on stone floors. Starkeepers standing vigil beneath skies alive with color. Then loss, stars dimming, silence spreading. Guardians leaving their posts one by one until only echoes remained. Elira's chest tightened. "Why didn't anyone stop it?" she whispered. Cauldron's voice was heavy. "Because the sky did not break all at once. It faded slowly, and slow endings are the hardest to notice." The basin darkened slightly. "And now?" Elira asked. Vales met her gaze. "Now the bond must be renewed, or the stars will rest permanently." Orion clenched his fists. "And she's the last one who can do it." Elira turned to him sharply. I never asked to be chosen. Orion's voice softened. Neither did the stars when they fell. That night, Elira was given a chamber high within the observatory, its walls curved, its windows open to the sky. As she lay beneath a canopy of drifting constellations, sleep came slowly. When it did, it carried weight. She stood within the observatory, but it was different, brighter, alive. Starkeepers moved around her, their forms luminous, voices overlapping in harmony. At the center stood a woman cloaked in starlight, her face calm, resolute. You hesitate, the woman said. I'm afraid, Elira admitted. The woman smiled gently. So were we. The stars above flickered. What if I fail? Elira asked. Then the stars will grieve, the woman replied. But they will not regret choosing you. Light surged. Elira woke with tears on her cheeks. Outside her window, a single star flared brighter than the rest, just for a moment. The following day, Cauldron guided her to the observatory's highest platform. Every starkeeper must choose, he said, not whether to serve, but how. He gestured to 3 ancient instruments. The lens binds you to memory. The lantern binds you to the land. The vigil binds you to the sky. Elira studied them. And the cost? She asked quietly. Cauldron did not answer immediately. Connection, he said finally. To walk between worlds, to never belong fully to one. She nodded slowly. Below them, Eldoria stirred. People gathered in the streets, drawn by instinct, looking upward. Elira placed a hand over her heart. I don't want to be a symbol, she said. I want to be a bridge. The observatory hummed in response. Vales exhaled slowly. Then perhaps the stars chose well. But even as hope rekindled within the observatory walls, far beyond Eldoria's borders, something ancient shifted. In places where starlight never reached, shadows gathered, listening, waiting. The observatory at the edge of time had awakened, and the sky was watching. Whispers written across the cosmos. Night settled over Eldoria like a held breath. From the highest platform of the observatory, Elira watched the sky shift, not dramatically, not with sudden flares or falling stars, but with subtle movements that only those who listened could sense. The constellations leaned closer as if curious. Threads of light trembled faintly between them, invisible to most eyes but clear to hers. Do you hear it? Cauldron asked quietly, standing beside her. Elira nodded. Not voices, more like echoes. Good, he said. That means the cosmos has begun speaking again. They descended into the inner chamber, a place few had entered in generations. Its walls were smooth, dark stone, etched with spiraling patterns that mirrored the slow drift of galaxies. At the center stood a wide circular floor inlaid with silver lines, star paths, intersecting and diverging endlessly. This chamber records what the sky cannot hold forever, Vales explained. whispers written across the cosmos, anchored here so they are never fully lost. Orion watched Elira closely. Once you step inside, it will respond to you, not with answers, but with memories. Elira exhaled slowly and stepped forward. The moment her foot touched the silver inlay, the chamber awakened. Light bloomed softly beneath her, spreading outward along the star paths. The air shimmered. A low hum rose, not sound but sensation, vibrating gently through her bones. She closed her eyes, and the whispers came. She saw oceans reflecting unfamiliar constellations. Cities built in harmony with the night, their rooftops open to the stars. Starkeepers gathered in quiet circles, sharing not commands but understanding, listening to the sky as one might listen to a trusted friend. Then the images shifted. She felt fear ripple through the cosmos as something changed, subtle at first. A misalignment, a silence where there had once been song. The whispers grew fragmented, desperate to be heard. Elira's breath caught. They were calling out, she whispered, not for help but for attention. Cauldron's voice reached her from afar. Yes, and for a long time no one answered. The whispers darkened. She saw shadows stretching where starlight weakened, feeding on neglect rather than malice. They grew not because they were strong, but because the light had forgotten to stay connected. Tears slipped down Elira's cheeks. "This isn't a war," she said. "It's a forgetting." The chamber pulsed in agreement. When she opened her eyes, the others stood very still. Vayli spoke first. "What did you hear?" "That the stars don't need to be saved," Elira said softly. "They need to be remembered." Orion let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Cauldron smiled faintly. "Then you've heard the most important whisper of all." They moved to a stone table where ancient scrolls lay unrolled, their ink shimmering faintly. Unlike ordinary writing, these symbols shifted as Elira watched, rearranging themselves into patterns she somehow understood without reading. "These are the cosmic impressions," Vayli said. "Records not written by hands but by alignment. They change based on who observes them." Elira traced one symbol lightly with her finger. It warmed beneath her touch. "They're incomplete," she said. "Yes," Cauldron replied. "They always were. They were never meant to be finished by one keeper alone." Elira looked up. "Then why am I the last?" Silence followed. Orion answered quietly. "Because the sky believes one voice might remind the others how to listen again." That night, Eldoria dreamed. Across the city, people stirred from sleep with a strange sense of comfort, as though something long absent had returned, not loudly but gently. Children turned in their beds, smiling faintly. Lanterns glowed a little steadier. High in the observatory, Elira stood alone beneath the open ceiling. She lifted the fallen constellation shard Corin had given her. It glimmered softly, responding to the stars above. "Can you hear me?" she whispered. The shard pulsed once. Then another sound joined the night, not thunder, not wind, but a deep resonance like a chord struck across the heavens. Far beyond Eldoria's borders, shadows recoiled. Something ancient stirred, uneasy. The next day brought tension. Vales paced the observatory floor, his usual calm strained. The cosmic balance is shifting faster than expected. The whispers are spreading beyond the capital. That's good, Orion said, isn't it? Vales shook his head. Not entirely. Light attracts attention. Cauldron nodded. And some things remember the stars not as companions, but as rivals. Elira listened quietly. Then it's time, she said finally. Both men turned to her. Time for what? Orion asked. To walk the star roads, she replied. Not just listen, but respond. Cauldron studied her for a long moment. You understand what that means. I understand what it costs to do nothing, Elira said. Vales closed his eyes briefly. The whispering expanse lies beyond the eastern horizon. The stars speak loudest there, and so do the shadows. Elira nodded. Then that's where I'll go. Before she left, Cauldron gave her a final gift. A simple band of silver etched with ever-shifting constellations. The mark of continuity, he said. It will anchor you to the sky and to yourself. As he slid it onto her wrist, the observatory trembled softly, acknowledging the bond. Orion walked with her to the gates. You don't have to carry this alone, he said quietly. Elira smiled gently. I know, but this part I must walk first. He pressed a hand to his chest in the old gesture of the Star Keepers. Then may the sky never turn away from you. As Elira stepped beyond the capital, the stars overhead shimmered, subtly rearranging, aligning into paths unseen by ordinary eyes. Behind her, Eldoria rested easier. Ahead of her, the cosmos whispered more urgently now, its messages no longer fading into silence. And far beyond the light, something listened back, not with warmth, but with hunger. The star maps that refused to change. Beyond the eastern horizon, the land changed in ways that could not be marked on ordinary maps. Elira felt it beneath her feet first, the ground subtly resisting each step, as though the earth itself hesitated to let her pass. The air grew thinner, not colder but quieter, muffled like sound beneath deep water. Even the wind seemed careful here, choosing its path deliberately. This was the whispering expanse, and somewhere within it lay the star maps that had not shifted for 1,000 years. She walked beneath a sky that looked familiar at first glance, yet wrong in small, unsettling ways. Certain constellations sat where they always had, unchanged across centuries, while others flickered at the edges of her vision, unstable and restless. Elira stopped and looked up. These aren't natural, she murmured. The silver band on her wrist warmed gently in agreement. Long ago, she remembered, though the memory was not entirely hers. Star keepers had anchored portions of the sky, locking certain constellations in place to preserve balance. Those star maps were meant to be temporary guides during times of transition. But temporary solutions had a way of becoming permanent. She followed the pull deeper into the expanse until the ground rose into low, pale hills etched with faint, glowing lines. At their center stood a structure half buried by time, a star cartotheca. Its doors were sealed, its stone weathered smooth by centuries of cosmic drift. Above the entrance, a single inscription glimmered faintly. Here the sky was held still. Eldoria exhaled slowly and stepped inside. The interior was vast and dim, illuminated by the faint glow of hovering star sheets, translucent planes of light etched with constellations. They hung motionless, frozen mid-drift, as if time had forgotten them. She walked among them carefully. Each map hummed softly, vibrating with restrained energy. When she brushed her fingers against one, it flared brighter, then resisted, pushing back gently like a tide refusing to turn. "They don't want to move," she whispered. The whisper returned not as sound but as pressure. "We were told to stay." Eldoria's breath caught. "You were told or you were afraid?" She asked softly. Silence. Then slowly a voice emerged, thin, fragmented, like starlight passing through cracked glass. "Change breaks what cannot bend." Eldoria closed her eyes. She saw it then. Ancient star keepers standing where she stood now, their fear carefully hidden beneath duty. The sky had been shifting too quickly. Shadows had been forming. In their desperation, they had chosen stillness over flow, and the sky had obeyed. But the cosmos was not meant to be still. The cartotheca trembled faintly as Eldoria stepped toward the central dais, where the prime star map hovered. Unlike the others, it glowed warmly, alive with restrained motion, stars pressing gently against invisible boundaries. "This one remembers," she said. She reached out. The moment her fingers touched the map, the world shifted. She stood beneath a sky in motion, stars drifting freely, weaving patterns that reshaped themselves with every breath. The land below pulsed in harmony, rivers glowing, forests breathing light. Then the sky slowed. Fear crept in. Hands reached upward, grasping at the heavens, anchoring them, pleading for stability. The motion stopped, and the harmony faded. Eldoria staggered, pulling back, gasping. "That's why the whispers grew desperate," she said. They weren't fading, they were trapped. The cartotheca groaned, stone creaking under unseen strain. From the shadows between the star sheets, something moved. Not a creature, not yet, but a distortion, a folding of absence where light should have been. It fed on restraint, on stagnation. The first true shadow Eldoria had seen. "You stayed too long," it murmured, its voice layered, echoing from many directions at once. "The sky belongs to silence now." Eldoria stood her ground. "No," she said steadily, "it belongs to movement." The shadow recoiled slightly, not from fear but confusion. The silver band on her wrist flared brighter. "You cannot release them," the shadow hissed. "The maps are bound." Elira lifted her chin. "Then I won't break them." She placed both hands on the prime star map. "I'll listen." The whispers surged, not chaotic now, but focused, guiding her hands, her breath, her heartbeat. She felt the slow rhythm of the cosmos, the way stars longed not for freedom alone, but for trust. "Move," she whispered, not as command, but invitation. The prime map pulsed. Then softly, gently, the first star shifted. Not far, not fast, just enough. The surrounding maps responded, lines glowing, boundaries thinning. One by one, constellations eased into new alignments, not breaking the sky, but healing it. The shadow screamed, not in pain, but in loss. This world was built on stillness. It cried. "And it's dying because of it," Elira replied. Light surged through the Cartotheca. When the glow faded, the star sheets hovered differently, alive, drifting slowly once more. The prime map shimmered, its energy finally unbound. Outside, the sky shifted, not violently, not dramatically, but correctly. Elira stumbled back, breath shaking. The shadow retreated into the fractures it had emerged from, weakened, incomplete. "You cannot undo everything," it whispered as it vanished. "Others will rise." Elira nodded. "I know." She emerged from the Cartotheca at dawn. The whispering expanse no longer felt muffled. Wind moved freely now, carrying warmth. Above her, the stars drifted subtly, beautifully, no longer frozen in fear. Far away in Eldoria, the observatory instruments stirred, recalibrating themselves without human touch. Cauldron felt it immediately. "They're moving," he whispered. Vales closed his eyes. "The maps are changing." Orion smiled faintly. "Then she's doing it." Elira rested briefly at the edge of the expanse, exhaustion settling deep into her bones. She knew this was only the beginning. Releasing the sky would not be welcomed by all. Change never was. But as she lay beneath the newly flowing stars, something within her settled. For the first time, the whispers did not beg. They sang. And somewhere beyond sight, forces older than fear began to stir, aware now that the last star-keeper was not preserving the past. She was setting it free. Moonlit roads beneath a silent sky. After the star maps began to move again, the world did not celebrate. It grew quiet. Elira felt the silence the moment she left the whispering expanse. The land ahead stretched wide and pale beneath the moon, its roads glowing faintly as if remembering how to shine. These were the moonlit roads, ancient paths laid down by the first star-keepers, meant to guide travelers when the sky itself could no longer speak. Now the sky said nothing at all. The stars still moved, still breathed, but they whispered less, as if holding themselves in cautious reserve. Elira walked alone, her steps soft against stone warmed by lingering moonlight. "You're afraid," she murmured to the heavens. No answer came. The silence was not hostile. It was wounded. She tightened her cloak and continued. The moonlit roads were unlike ordinary paths. They curved gently, following no visible logic, bending around hills that didn't yet exist and skirting valleys long since filled by time. Their surface shimmered faintly, etched with lines that caught moonlight and guided the way forward. Elira followed instinct rather than direction. Each step felt, watched not by eyes but by memory. She sensed it in the way the air shifted around her, in the way the road seemed to anticipate her footing. These paths remembered every traveler who had ever walked them, every star-keeper who had borne doubt, hope, and quiet resolve. And now they were remembering her. She stopped at a crossroads where 3 moonlit paths diverged. No signs marked them. No whispers rose to guide her. For the first time since leaving Eldoria, Elira felt truly uncertain. "Which one?" she asked softly. The silver band on her wrist remained cool. She closed her eyes and breathed. The silence deepened, but within it she sensed something fragile. The stars were listening even if they were no longer speaking freely. They were waiting to see what she would do without their guidance. Elira smiled faintly. "Then I'll choose," she said. She stepped onto the middle path. The road brightened beneath her feet. As night deepened, the moon rose higher, washing the land in pale silver. Shadows stretched long and thin, but they did not move on their own, not yet. She walked until fatigue slowed her steps, until the hush of the sky settled into her bones. When she finally rested, she sat at the edge of the road, drawing her knees close, gazing upward. "I know you're still there," she whispered to the stars. "Even if you're quiet." The silence answered not with sound but with presence. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it carried her somewhere strange. She dreamed of a road without light, not darkness, but absence. Figures walked it, their forms blurred, their faces turned upward in longing. They reached toward a sky that no longer responded, their hands brushing empty air. Elira stepped among them unseen. "Why don't you speak?" One figure whispered. "We listened once," another murmured. And the sky changed. Elira's chest ached. She lifted her hands and moonlight spilled gently outward, not bright, not commanding, just enough to reveal the road beneath their feet. "Walk," she said softly, "even when the sky is silent." The dream dissolved into silver haze. She woke before dawn. The moonlit roads shimmered faintly, brighter than before. Elira stood, brushing dust from her cloak. "Thank you," she whispered, to the road, to the night, to the unseen listeners above. As she continued, the land changed again. Ruins emerged, low stone arches half buried by grass, their surfaces etched with moon symbols worn smooth by centuries. This had once been a way station for travelers guided by starlight. Now it lay abandoned. She approached cautiously. At the center of the ruin stood a circular plinth, its surface cracked, its purpose forgotten. Elira reached out, placing her palm against the stone. It pulsed faintly. Memory surged. She saw Starkeepers resting here long ago, sharing quiet meals beneath the moon, trading stories rather than strategies. This place had been built not for power, but for reassurance, for reminding travelers that they were not alone. Elira swallowed. "We still need places like this," she said softly. She closed her eyes and focused, not on the stars above, but on the road beneath her, the land around her, the quiet courage of those who had walked before. Moonlight gathered, not falling from the sky, but rising from the stone. The plinth glowed gently, cracks filling with soft silver light. The ruins stirred, not rebuilding, but remembering. A waypoint reborn. Far away in the observatory, Cauldron gasped. "The moon stations," he whispered. "They're awakening." Vailey stared at the instruments which now glowed with unfamiliar patterns. "She's doing something new." Orion smiled. "She's listening to the silence." Back on the road, Elira felt it, the subtle shift, the way the world leaned closer. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt attentive, but silence has weight, and weight attracts shadows. As the moon dipped lower, the road ahead darkened, not from lack of light, but from something drawing it inward. The air thickened. A chill crept along Elira's spine. She slowed. From the edges of the road, shadows pooled, shapeless, patient, drawn by the absence of star song. They did not attack. They waited. "You don't frighten me," Elira said quietly. The shadows stirred. "We were born of forgetting," they murmured, "and forgetting grows." Elira lifted her chin. "Then remember with me." She stepped forward. The moonlight beneath her feet brightened, flowing outward along the road, threading through the silence. It did not banish the shadows, but it gave them shape, definition. And in that definition they hesitated. The shadows recoiled slightly, uncertain. Elira did not chase them away. She passed through them. When dawn finally came, it arrived softly, pale light spilling across the land. The moonlit roads dimmed. Their task completes for now. Elira paused at the edge of a high plain and looked back. Behind her, faint silver lines marked the paths she had walked, visible proof that even silence could guide if one listened closely enough. Ahead lay darker lands, where the sky bent unnaturally and moonlight struggled to reach. The whispers would return, she knew, and when they did, they would not all be gentle. But for now, the road beneath a silent sky held. And the last Starkeeper walked on, guided not by certainty, but by trust. The gathering shadows over Eldoria. The farther Elira traveled from the moonlit roads, the heavier the air became. It wasn't weight from wind or rain or cold. No, this was a presence she could feel pressing against her chest, tightening with every step, whispering insistently in the spaces between heartbeats. The sky above remained deceptively calm. Stars flickered, hesitant. Moonlight, too, seemed unsure of its own glow. And yet, beneath the surface, she sensed the slow, deliberate march of something older than Eldoria itself, something that had waited for centuries to notice the stirrings of the last star-keeper. The shadows. Not the fleeting kind that bend in corners or stretch in the twilight, but the ancient kind, living, patient, and deliberate. Eldora's pace slowed, but she did not falter. "They will test me," she murmured softly, fingers brushing the silver band on her wrist. The warmth there was constant, steady, and it lent her courage. "They've waited this long. I can face them." The land ahead darkened as she descended into a valley thick with mist. The horizon, usually defined by soft hills and forests, now melted into gray indistinction. Trees here were gnarled and knotted, their branches reaching upward like desperate hands, clawing at a sky that had forgotten to shine. And from between those branches, the first whispers of the shadows emerged. They were subtle at first, a curl of darkness coiling around a rock, a ripple across the surface of a stream though there was no wind, faint murmurs low enough to be mistaken for her own thoughts. Elira stopped. She closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. "I know you're here," she said. "I can feel you." The shadows twisted, coalescing into shapes, humanoid but blurry like figures in water. They watched her, silent, waiting, testing. One drifted forward, taller than the others, stretching into the night sky. Its voice resonated inside her head, echoing like distant thunder. "You cannot hold the sky. It is ours to claim now." Elira's chest ached, not with fear, but with resolve. "The sky is not yours," she whispered. "It belongs to those who listen." The shadows recoiled slightly, uncertain. The moonlight along her path flared faintly, enough to carve silver lines along the mist. Shapes wavered, confused by the light. She took a careful step forward. The first wave of shadows pressed against her consciousness, probing, seeking the slightest crack in her resolve. Elira felt the cold creep into her bones, and yet the silver band glowed steadily, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "I am not alone," she said softly, recalling every lesson from Stelmere, the high ways, and the observatory. "I carry the paths of those who came before me." The largest shadow hissed, swirling around her like smoke. "They failed, and so will you." Elira raised her hands instinctively. She felt the shard from Corin in her pocket hum with warmth. She drew it out, holding it before her. The crystalline light flared, illuminating the valley with soft, unwavering glow. The shadows recoiled further. She spoke again, louder this time. "I am listening, and the stars are listening with me." For the first time, the whispers of the cosmos surged, gentle, persistent, and guiding. The lines of light from her band, the shard, and the moonlight coalesced, forming faint threads connecting her to the horizon, the valley, and the distant capital. The shadows hissed, twisted, and for a moment the valley itself seemed to hold its breath. Elira pressed forward, feeling the weight of the ancient darkness pressing in from all sides. She did not run. She did not strike. She walked deliberately, her hands trailing faint streaks of silver light along the misty ground. The shadows darted closer, trying to disrupt her connection to the stars, but each step she took strengthened the threads. She felt the echoes of those long gone star keepers who had once fought or faltered, aligning behind her, lending their quiet courage to her journey. By the time she reached the center of the valley, a circular clearing surrounded by twisted trees, the shadows had fully manifested. They were vast, towering shapes that absorbed the moonlight and bent it inward. Their forms were chaotic, yet strangely ordered, like a storm frozen mid-surge. Their whispers blended into a cacophony of longing, regret, and defiance. Elira's voice rose above them. I am not afraid. I carry their light, and I will not let it fade. A thread of silver shot from her wristband, snaking through the air and entwining the shadows. They recoiled, screeching, yet could not completely break the thread. She drew in another breath and pressed the shard higher toward the sky. It flared, sending a pulse of soft, white radiance into the valley. The shadows wavered, confusion rippling across them. I do not fight you, Elira whispered. I remind you. The stars remember, and so must you. The lead shadow seemed to hesitate, its form flickering. Others swirled around, uncertain, as the gentle light washed over them. Elira's heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the valley, with the faint murmur of stars, and for a moment the world held perfectly still. Then slowly, the darkness began to dissolve, not defeated but understood. It receded like mist lifting in dawn, leaving behind shapes softened by the silver glow of moonlight and starlight. Elira sank to her knees, exhausted but steady. The weight in the valley lifted, leaving a calm so profound that she could hear her own heartbeat echoing through the silence. Above, the stars shone steadily. The moon reflected a softer, gentler glow. The paths she had walked, moonlit roads and star-threaded expanse, still pulsed faintly in remembrance. When she returned to Eldoria, the observatory sensed the shift immediately. Cauldron, Vales, and Orion gathered at the high platform, their eyes wide as the instruments hummed softly in recognition. She's done it, Cauldron breathed. The shadows, they listened. Vales exhaled slowly, not defeated, just reminded. That was never the point, was it? Orion shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She's the bridge. In the distance, the capital streets glimmered with faint starlight. Lanterns along the highways pulsed gently, synchronized with the rhythm of the sky. Elira's journey had not ended. The shadows would return, as all things that slept too long eventually do. But now they would have a choice, and the world, fragile and beautiful, would continue to be guided by light and remembrance. For the first time in 1,000 years, Eldoria's night felt truly alive. The final light of the Star Keeper, the sky above Eldoria had changed. Not dramatically, not with storms or falling stars, but subtly, irrevocably. Threads of silver traced constellations, no longer static, weaving patterns that shifted gently across the heavens. The moonlight glimmered softer, more patient, like a reflection of all the quiet moments that had gone unnoticed for centuries. Elira stood at the edge of the capital, atop the high observatory's outer balcony. Her silver band pulsed faintly, the shard from Corin warm in her hand. The weight of the journey pressed upon her, deep in her bones, yet her heart felt steady, anchored by the countless whispers of the cosmos, by the paths she had walked, by the moonlit roads and star maps she had awakened. This was the culmination, the final light. From the distant horizon, a ripple of darkness approached, not like the shadows she had encountered before, but larger, more deliberate, stretching as far as the eye could see. It moved not to attack, but to reclaim, to remind the world of what had been lost, of the centuries spent in quiet decay. Elira's fingers tightened around the shard. She could feel the pulse of the stars above, the echoes of star keepers long gone, and the weight of Eldoria itself pressing quietly against her chest. She did not step back. She did not flinch. "The sky is ours to protect," she whispered to herself, "and theirs to remember." The shadows hesitated at the boundary of the city, as though sensing the presence that awaited them. Moonlight and starlight flowed outward from the observatory, threading through the streets and along the high ways, illuminating faint lanterns that had lain dormant for centuries. Each glow pulsed softly, synchronized with her heartbeat. She raised the shard high. Its crystalline light flared and split, sending threads upward, weaving between the stars and the approaching darkness. The shadows recoiled, twisting and curling against the invisible force, unable to resist the gentle power of remembrance. From within the pulse, a voice, not hers, not entirely hers, resonated through the city and the skies. "Remember, listen, guide." Elira's eyes widened. It was the chorus of star keepers past, their voices merging into a single, unbroken light. She felt their presence surrounding her, supporting her, giving her strength. The largest of the shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness attempting to engulf the city. Elira did not strike it, did not fight it. She opened her hands and let the shard float between her palms, its light growing until it encompassed her entire being. "Do you remember?" She whispered. "The skies, the paths, the moonlit roads, Eldoria remembers, and so must you." The shadow hesitated. The pulse of light wrapped around it, threading through its form, unraveling centuries of stagnation. For the first time, the darkness seemed uncertain, confused by the warmth it had long forgotten, the warmth of being seen, of being part of something greater. Then, slowly, it dissipated, melting into faint ribbons of gray that drifted harmlessly into the air. The city exhaled a collective sigh she could feel through the pulse of light. Lanterns flared brighter along every street. The highways shimmered faintly, their silver lines visible once again beneath the soft moonlight. The stars above shifted fully, forming constellations that had been missing for centuries. Orion's, Lyre's, and long-forgotten patterns stretched across the sky, alive and glowing. Threads of light connected the heavens to Eldoria below, the cities, the forests, the rivers, linking every living soul to the song of the cosmos. Elira felt tears stream down her face. This was not victory. This was not power. This was restoration. From behind, Cauldron, Vales, and Orion approached. Their eyes reflected the glow of the heavens above. "You've done it," Cauldron whispered, voice trembling with awe. "The stars, they've returned." Vales nodded slowly. "And the shadows, they remember now. They'll never fully vanish, but they will no longer hold sway over the land." Orion stepped beside her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've become what they always needed, a star keeper who listens, who guides, and who trusts the sky to trust her." Elira's gaze drifted upward, following a silver thread connecting a newly awakened constellation to the moonlit road she had walked. "It was never about fighting," she murmured. "It was about remembering and carrying that memory forward." As dawn approached, the first gentle rays of sunlight brushed the city. The glow of the stars did not fade. They blended seamlessly with the golden light of morning. Lanterns still pulsed along the highways, gentle reminders that both night and day had their place in guiding the world. Elira descended the observatory stairs slowly, breathing in the scent of Eldoria after centuries of quiet neglect. People emerged from their homes, their eyes wide, faces upturned, watching the sky in wonder. Children laughed quietly as they traced patterns on the streets, their steps following invisible lines of starlight. The city felt alive again, not because of power, but because it remembered. Cauldron, Vales, and Orion walked beside her. Silence stretched comfortably, filled with shared understanding. "We should return to the observatory," Cauldron said. "There is work yet to be done, keeping the star threading in balance." Elira nodded, feeling the shard pulse one last time. Its light dimmed, settling into the silver band around her wrist, a constant reminder of the journey she had undertaken and the responsibilities she now carried. By midday, Eldoria had fully awakened. Markets hummed quietly, lanterns flickered, and the whispers of the cosmos lingered faintly in the air. Travelers moved along the restored moonlit roads, drawn not by fear, but by the soft pull of guidance. Elira stood at the center of the city, looking up at the sky. For the first time, she felt a profound connection, not only to the stars, but to every shadow that had once sought dominion over the world. They were no longer enemies, but part of the story, part of the delicate balance she had learned to nurture. The shard in her hand flared one final time, warm and steady, before settling quietly against her heart. And then the city exhaled. Eldoria's night, once lost to silence and shadows, had returned to life. Elira whispered to the heavens above, "Rest easy, Eldoria, I am here. I will listen. I will guide, and we will never forget again." The stars responded, not with brilliance, not with thunder, but with quiet acknowledgement. Threads of silver stretched across the sky, across the land, connecting everything in a delicate, eternal tapestry. The last star keeper had fulfilled her promise, and Eldoria would sleep peacefully beneath the watchful glow of the restored cosmos for the first time in 1,000 years.
There's nothing else you need to listen for now. Just let your breathing stay slow and easy. If you're still awake, that's okay. And if you're drifting off, let yourself go gently. I'll be right here next time. Rest well and good night.